When you are.
Hi, I'm Richard Hall. I'm the project lead for Project Bovine, and this is the team that will be working on the project. We have Luke, who is the concept artist.
Yep, and doing the audio as well.
He's also doing the audio design as well. We have Steve, who is the
lead level designer.
And we have Mike.
I'm the lead narrative designer and the lead texture artist.
And we also have Harry,
I'm lead 3D modeler.
And Will.
I'm lead 3D animator and lead coder.
And Liam.
I'm 3D modeler and texturer.
Right, for the monetization of the game,
so we can see this. Sorry.
For the monetization of the game, we're going to have an initial purchase of $49.99. Now, we haven't really considered DLC, but the narrative is written in a way that allow the game to have potential for sequels. And with this idea in mind, this could also be turned into a franchise, so we can make deals with streaming services such as Disney Plus, Netflix, and other streaming services. Our unique selling point of the game is a unique perspective of the spaghetti western subgenre, with a science fiction environment while maintaining a horror aesthetic through both the gameplay and the narrative aspects of the game. Next slide. The target audience is primarily 18 to 40-year-old males, while our secondary target audience is sci-fi horror fans, to generalize the whole game. Our methodologies, since we're working in an agile workflow, we'll be switching and talking to one another with instant and quick and efficiently. So we're using Discord to communicate, and we'll be using 3D softwares like 3ds Max, Maya, Mudbox and Substance to develop the game, as well as UE4 for the game to be our engine that we're going to be working in. Our desirables, what we want to do is build 5 zones which the player can travel through, different with seamless transitions, and populate those areas with animals, NPCs, and characters, and environmental hazards. We also want to include a full-blown crafting system, but this is yet to be defined later on. We've also looked into character customization, but we're prioritizing a lot more aspects that are a necessity for the game. The deliverables. What we expect to build for the game, or at least in this prototype, is a starting zone with a tutorial area to show off all the basic gameplay and aspects of the game that it will introduce the player to the game. We'll also include a basic and primitive survival mechanic, such as drinking and eating and hunting several animals within the environment and the tutorial area. We'll also include several characters that were a part of the narrative spread out around the tutorial area, which will become companions and such like that, as well as several weapons that the player will be able to equip and use within their specific environments. We'll also include several enemies like animals and tribals and stuff to keep the tutorial area at least hostile in some aspects. The game will also be in first and third person perspective. I'll take you to Harry, who's the lead modeler.
So far this project, alongside the other 3D modelers, I've been working on creating a detailed asset list so we can stay organised with what needs creating for the project. We've also devised a system that allows us to track the progress of a model, whether it's currently being modelled, whether it's been started, whether it needs texturing, or whether it's completely finished. We're also using a few different workflows for the project, one of them being modular. I've put an example there for a modular building. Basically means we can create a set few models and then use their models to create variations. It just saves a lot of time, makes sure we're working as efficient as possible, and it adds more variety for the level designers when they come to build the buildings. At the moment, I'm working on the hero weapons for the characters, as well as I should be working on the characters soon. You can see a progress shot there, early days for the shotgun. It was modelled from a base of an actual shotgun that exists today, but then the process is just adding sci-fi elements to it, so parts of a missive and floating parts and things like that. We're also following the agile workflow, as Rich mentioned, so I will be working on other aspects of the project further on down the line. This is one of the first modelled and finished, one of the first finished models for the game. As you can see, I've tried to blend the various themes of the game that we've talked about, more of a traditional style grip with some Western elements inspired by the cylinder of a revolver there. And to bring in some more sci-fi elements, I've looked at emissive materials that light up down the blade, as well as floating parts there. So I'll carry on to Liam.
Hi, I'm Liam, and so far I've been helping out in other areas of the project. We are working the agile workflow, as Maurice has mentioned, so I've just been helping where possible, but my main focus now will be working on 3D models. Such 3D models we working on like buildings, character models, the enemy models, character weapons, the escape pods and things like that. On to the next slide. Yep. Here we have the first character. He's Maurice. He's like the alien bovine that was resurrected sort of by one of the other characters in the game. And this is like just a basic concept of his model sheet and some like cybernetic pieces that will be attached to him as that's what keeps him alive. Next we have Jared. We haven't got a full model sheet for him yet, but we've got some rough ideas of like the clothing he'll wear. He's a human character that uses the AA shotgun, which Harry showed you. Next we have Stephanie. She's a female character, so a bit of a mix-up in the group. She's another human. This is two concepts of the full model sheet. One's in Photoshop and colour, while the other is just a rough pencil outline. Yep, here's CF5. He's our first robot character. He doesn't actually like act like a normal robot. He floats. And his prime weapon is the sword you see modelled earlier. And we haven't got full profile pictures of him yet, but we got just the basic concepts of how he might look and like how we're going to go about it. Yep. Here's Kronk. We actually have a full model sheet of him. We don't have a sketch of him, but we've got a full design of him. Here's Stephanie's blaster as well. We don't have Kronk's weapon though, however, but we have started the model of it. So there will be further development on that. Here we have 3 characters that we're currently working on. We haven't quite got there with them. We have CP2 over here, who is he's another android character, but he will actually act more like a real robot, with like wheels and sort of that sort of thing. And then we have the pilot, who's open to interpretation yet. We haven't nailed down if it's going to be a female or a male. Most likely we'll get close to deciding that when we get to that character. But so far it's open for interpretation, and this is just like rough ideas of how it might look. And then our final character is Luke Lakerson. He was once part of the crew, but now he's like the bad guy of the group. And he's going to be like a hybrid character, like he's got some alien mutations. And yeah. The final sort of, next slide. Right, cool. The final sort of character, this is just a rough design again, is like low infected enemies that are on the world. They have different like infection rates. They start as like a low infection and get higher and higher, which is like these little bits here. And obviously they are combated up because they've been in civil wars and stuff, fighting as the world has gone worse and worse and this infection's grown, taken over. We're going to have other enemies which are going to be like the bovine scene, like Maurice, but they're going to be more primitive and they're going to attack using like their tails and claws and stuff. And on to Luke.
We've got one more.
You got one more.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
This is the docile creature.
This docile creature, it's going to be a mixture between the two. It's going to be like a mutated warthog that you can hunt and eat. Now,
So your lead concept artist.
yeah.
Obviously, I am the lead concept artist for this project, and we were just going through the environments to start off overall. Because we've got 5 or 6 different areas, we wanted to focus more on the tutorial area, which is going to be more of a marshland city, so obviously forests overgrown, buildings collapse, different pieces of junk down the street incorporating the sci-fi elements into it. We have a few sketches here that were done by other people in the team to help out because of the agile workflow. And in the bottom right corner, we've got one piece of environmental concept that was done from incorporating those original ones done in rough and then adding more colouring elements to them. Next slide. As for the audio, we're going for Western and futuristic. That's going to be the main theme of the game itself, so when you're exploring, going around, finding different parts and the space shuttles that have landed. But of course, we have a sewer system inside the game that we want to incorporate, and for that we'll be using different horror tunes and themes, and different Foley sounds like heartbeat, heavy breathing, footsteps and all that stuff to create an atmosphere where the player is understanding the circumstances. I will be using 3 different programs, which is Audacity, SoundQ and Soundation. This will allow me to introduce different beats, have the recordings and adapt them, and modify them inside Unreal Engine at will.
Our lead texture artist and narrative designer.
I'm lead texture artist for Project Bovine. Not much texturing is happening right now, as we're just doing bits and pieces, but the bulk of the texturing will be happening very soon. As with the concept art, the texturing style will be very realistic, along with incorporated futurism and wear and tear. The environment will have a very post-apocalyptic look and feel. That's why I brought an image of Angkor Wat, which is in the Cambodian jungle. We'll be using influences of the architecture, as well as looking how it's overgrown over the past millennia or so, and how it's kind of weared out and which pieces have stayed. The whole plot of the full story will be to find out what happened to the planet and escape, so we paid a lot of attention to the contextual storytelling. When I was writing up the narrative, I decided to base the story on several historical events. So we got the Chinese Civil War, the Chinese Warlord era, the Bronze Age collapse, and the fall of Rome, which combined together is, in my opinion, would make a beautiful Roman apocalypse. I was tasked out with basically creating an almost world-ending apocalypse for a prosperous world that has space travel. So I needed help from our own catastrophes. A good example of history being a base plot is in Star Wars, which pulls inspiration from the transition of Rome from a republic to empire. Next one. Yeah. So the narrative is a sequel to last year's cutscene project. Our crew has crashed upon the once prosperous planet of Athena, which is a neighbouring planet of the Bovine homeworld. Athena has been in ruins for many centuries, even millennia at this point, who really knows. Overgrown with jungles, and outside those jungles are vast deserts where nothing can really live. And its people have turned tribal over the many centuries. You are the pilot and must survive to find the missing crew, solve the mystery and return to civilization.
Nice.
So our dialogue will be very limited and will incorporate elements from popular RPGs like Fallout. It will be a multi-choice system known as a dialogue tree that replicates the classic RPG format while maintaining the continuity of the narrative.
Sweet.
So the narrative, expect ruins, obviously. Vast jungles dotted with still active streetlights that come from an unknown source. You will find that out later in the narrative, but for right now I think we're just basically making a tutorial. You'll find rushing rivers, dark sewers and bustling subway cities filled with horrifying creatures of the night. It would be a dystopian post-apocalyptic environment with a dark, realistic style, and it basically fits just well enough to be in the survival horror game format that we're trying to replicate.
Sweet. Thanks. The AI systems will the lead coder.
There will be 3 different types of enemy AIs included in the game. A smart ranged enemy who will be able to use cover, sprint, and will attack, as I said, from range, so it's difficult for the player to deal with. There'll be a sort of dumbed down version of that, so it's the basic run at you and shoot, whilst also possibly having some limited cover functionality, so to differentiate it from the smart one. And the horde melee, where it's a lot of smaller enemies but they charge at you all at once and just run at you to attack you at close range. The non-aggressive ones be docile creatures, animals, creatures that you can kill for food, everywhere else. Those will act like normal animals, where you'll get close to them, they'll run away, or they'll charge at you, or something along those lines. And the companion AIs, they are basically going to be how the main character acts, but on a more scaled down, so they'll shoot at what you're shooting at, unless you tell them to shoot at something else, or take cover when you take cover, and follow you. Because we don't have a proper full-time animator for the project, most of the main animations are going to be done using Mixamo, but we will have custom animations when we need them.
Cool. Blueprint coding with Steve.
You're right there, I'm lead level designer, but I'm also helping out with the coding as well. So I've been working on a few of the simple stuff. So like we've got the sprint system there. I've got like a demonstration there of basically what we're going to be having, which I think it might have changed now, isn't it? We still have
That's exactly the one I use.
Okay, so it's at the end here, the demonstration I think. Basically,
So
you get
this
a
is one.
standard bar.
Is this one off YouTube or one you've actually done?
This is one off YouTube.
Okay.
It's implemented now, but we haven't got the actual footage of that. So yeah, they just run around and the bar will go down. Have you got it as a bar? Yeah, so we've got that as a bar. Same as this one, the health, thirst and stuff. This one's at the end, I think, or was it at the beginning? Could be at the beginning actually, this one. Some of these were off the internet, yeah. So this is at the beginning. So you've got like the basic bars at the top there, which you can see going down for like the first, which is blue, and green for hunger. And then you'll have items like the food and drink that we can do to recharge them again. So that's that one. We've got swapping weapons, so yet again, I haven't got actual footage of the weapons swapping, but this shows you at the beginning of the video. Basic swapping of the weapons and stuff like that. This has just got 2 in there, we're going to have a lot more than that, but it's just showing the basics of what we're going to try and implement. The weather system at the beginning of this video is kind of what we're having, but we're going to be building on it. So you have a dynamic weather system where it gets dark, cloudy, starts raining, but we're also going to have things like acid rain, stuff like that that will harm the player that you have to seek shelter from. Traps. This is about the only one I could find on the internet for the traps. We did the traps one, have you? Which one you loaded?
This is the bear trap.
Yeah, so I just got a simple bear trap off the internet. Well, a lot of other ones like trip wires that maybe like make off explosions, stuff like that. But I just grabbed that one off the internet to demonstrate roughly what we're going to be working towards. Same with the turret, just a little simple one I found on the internet to demonstrate shooting turrets and stuff. The last one on here is basically a pulse. At the beginning here you should see him send a pulse out once he clicks play. I think it's at the beginning that he shows the pulse. And this will basically highlight items of interest, stuff like that, enemies. To try and keep it more of a horror though, when it highlights the enemies, it's only going to be for a short period of time. So you know there's an enemy there, but you won't know the current location, you know, because you'll have a delay on how many times you can use that. We've got more features in the pipeline, but they're still being discussed at the moment. Next slide, please. Right, so level designs. Basically, I'm not very good at Photoshop, so I quickly knocked up some hand-drawn maps to start off with. So this one's basically the play area of the tutorial zone that we're going to do. And then over here is the underground sewer system, which I've then passed on to the artist, Rich over there, which did them up in Photoshop. You'll see those later on in the slides. Next one.
Sweet.
So these are some blockouts. So this is a picture of the overall area. So this is the world map with all the different locations marked on it. What I did is I did the blockout using height maps and then put in a water plane to simulate the water and stuff. I then passed this screen grab to Rich and he highlighted the areas and stuff like that and put on here where the pods are going to be and stuff. And on this one you've got a closer up view of that same area, but you can see where all the buildings have collapsed and stuff like that into like all the crevices that have formed over time. So here's a block out of, this is that's the whole area. So this is what we started off with. This is the original block out. It's now changed because instead of me creating that by hand, which I did, we're now using height maps. So this is what it did look like. You can fast forward most of this bit just to get to the sewer, which is still the same at the minute. So this is the sewer of the overview. This is not what the player would see. This is outside. If you go on a bit further, you should be able to get the inside of it. You can't really see it.
You can't really see it.
It's very dark because there's not much lighting in there, but basically it's like a tunnel system with lots of varying rooms and stuff. And if you play this one, this is only a short one. This is what the new blockout looks like now with all the buildings and the roads collapsed and stuff, which will be replaced with the proper assets as time goes on. The terrain is just default terrain. That will be done over time as well as the assets. Next one.
Yep.
So that's over to you with the Photoshop versions.
After Steve gave me the drawn versions of the level maps, I decided to shove them into Photoshop and basically revitalize them and allow the player and people working on the project to understand what they're actually going to see. On the bottom left, we have what the original level map that used to look like, taken it, and that's what we used the block out to build upon. And after we did that, that would seem to be a bit outdated of sorts, but still relevant to what we were building. So we did an updated version using the block out, the revitalized version of the block out, while also showing off the different aspects of the game with the dots representing the sewer entrances, while also showing off where the locations of the escape pods were, where the characters are. In the sewer map at the bottom right, probably my best version actually. You can't really see it, but it's dark, but it conveys all of the different areas of the map, different zones, and I try to allow that for the player to, so they can see, travel throughout all the areas. So each room and place has a specific purpose within the environment, and access to all the buttons unlocks the door to when it just basically conveys all the gameplay aspects with that area. Any questions?
Okay, I'm going to do it one by one initially, okay? All right,
Sure,
okay.
yeah.
All right. What's the game actually about?
It's about a group of survivors who have crashed down onto the planet, and you take the control of the pilot, and he has to rescue all the characters, and once he's teamed everything up, he goes to look for a mystery around the planet and discover what happened to the destruction of the planet and how it became like that.
Okay, so the first thing I noticed, you left it until 13 minutes before you actually said that.
Oh yeah.
Okay, all right. So you gave an idea what you see it was like a spaghetti western sci-fi horror genre, but it took you 13 minutes to actually describe what the actual game's about.
Oh yeah.
Because you should have done that right at the start, really. Okay. Okay. Will, looking at the AI systems, okay, in relation to the creatures, are they going to be two-legged or four-legged or what?
The horde ones are probably going to be four-legged, but it depends on what faction or tribe they end up coming from, or whether it's going to be animals, because it can vary depending on where they're actually in the game.
And how are we going to animate those?
Animate them, the animals we'll have to do ourselves, but
Using what though?
we probably use either Maya or 3ds Max for that.
Anything in particular?
I'm better with 3ds Max.
Well, I mean actual rigging systems. Thought about
rigging
that?
System. It probably end up being a custom rig for them, depending on what the actual animals look like.
Using what?
Bones, maybe the cat system if we can get it working properly.
Okay, good. Okay. Okay, so the monetization, can you go into that a bit more detail, Luke?
Yeah, because we're planning to turn it into a franchise to go on to other industries or into the films as well with Netflix and Disney Plus. We're hoping to push for that sort of thing, and with our target audience being 18 to 40-year-olds, males preferably, or sci-fi and horror, there's a lot of opportunity for it to expand even further using social influence.
Okay. Okay, Mike. Okay, what's the initial cost going to be of this game?
It's going to be about 750,000.
Sorry.
About 750,000.
Okay, I mean the actual price of the actual game.
Oh, I thought you meant budget. It's going to be $49.99.
How much?
$49.99.
$49.99.
Yeah. That's for the full game.
Okay. And you're asking for 750,000, yeah?
Yeah, that's a budget.
Okay. Same person, where are you going to get that money from?
Sorry?
Where are you going to get that money from?
Sorry?
Kickstarter.
Yeah, like Kickstarter, potential budget investors.
So yeah, we've put together a video for Kickstarter, so it gives you a rough outline of what we're doing so far, what we've worked on. So any potential investors, people want to donate, get an idea of what the game is and whether they'd like to put money towards it. And then we'd build up that money. As we'd reach further targets, we could apply more of our desirables that Rich talked about. And so we could proportionately scale it depending on how much money we've got as we reach targets.
Very good, okay. Okay, Steve, weather system.
Yes.
Okay. How do you think, is there any way you can implement, you talk about acid rain,
Yes.
have you thought about how you might affect the roughness of your meshes and your materials?
Well, I've given it some thought. I don't know quite how I would accomplish that yet, but it's something to look into.
Do you know what I mean by that?
Yeah, wear and tear of the acid basically coming down and making the model change or textures change.
What
and
else
stuff
do you
like
think, if it's raining, what else change?
that. Puddles, stuff like that. Water, mud gets soggier.
Okay, so basically what I'm trying to get you to say, like, go to the roughness of the materials, it'll make them look shiny and wet.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you could also make the mud, like, I'm not sure of the actual word, I think it's like deform or something, where you can sink into it.
That'd
like,
be good.
so
Plus also the sound of footsteps.
yeah.
Good. Okay. Mike.
Yeah.
Okay. So we're looking at Anchor Water as the inspiration for a lot of the overgrowth.
Yeah, that's just one of them. That's the one I wanted to put up there because it has both the architecture. I mean, it's a very historical building, so it's been overgrown for many centuries, maybe even millennia. It's got the wear and tear, but it's also made of stone, and kind of like a cementy mixture almost, which is really good because we could try and emulate that, but with a more modern city.
Okay.
So looking at where places have broken off and which places have stayed would be really good for modelling.
Okay. Liam, what programs are you be using for doing the character modelling?
Probably 3ds Max and maybe Blender as well.
Okay. So Liam again. are you going to be implementing the 5 zones and the tutorial zone, or is it just going to be the tutorial
Just
zone?
the tutorial.
Okay.
But we'd like to implement.
Yeah, basically, if we've got time, we'll be introducing another stage and so on until we run out of time, basically.
Yeah, and as
Pretty much.
the budget increased with the Kickstarter as well, you could look at creating more zones as we have more time to spend on it, more resources, we could probably source more textures,
Exactly, yeah.
that type of stuff. Just it would
Before
scale
Christmas, it'll
proportionally.
be the tutorial for definite, and then see what happens after that.
Okay. So Rich, can you tell me a little bit more about the crafting system?
Okay, the crafting system. We wanted to have a primitive crafting system where you could craft like buildings, little fortifications for the camp, for where the player is going to be staying in the tutorial zone. We have discussed whether or not to implement elements of like weapons and armor and like building weapons together, like tearing apart pieces and putting weapons together to allow the player to build their own personal weapons. But that's more of a desirable than a deliverable.
Okay.
We're just going to concentrate mostly on like traps around the base, turrets,
Yeah.
fence. and then
Okay,
go
so I'm
from
glad you
there.
mentioned turrets
Fortification
there.
and defences and
So
stuff.
Steve, the turrets, are they going to be AI, are they?
Basically, yeah, that'll be all. Basically, when the line of sight gets triggered through the perception thing, they'll shoot at the end.
Okay. So plots, Mike?
Yep.
So is it, like I said, is it a combination of all those narratives you looked at, is it? Or you just...
Yeah, I used them as a base and then kind of constructed it from there. So I took each kind of historical event and then put our own spin on it.
So that's basically the background history of how the planet got like that.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Because the whole thing will be about, the whole mystery will be finding Luke, which is like the main villain, as well as uncovering the mystery from either like data pads, different characters you can talk to, which is desirable really. And
NPCs there.
Yeah.
Yeah, and find out
Exactly.
why the space cows went nuts.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, I get that. Okay. Can you tell me a little bit more about the USP, Will?
To be honest, I haven't remembered the USB of working too much on the code. It's a spaghetti western, but it would help me find out what a spaghetti western was.
Can anyone help him out?
Yeah, I think like the main selling point is like we're taking lots of factors from different games and trying to blend them all together. So you've got like the horror aspects of like the tunnels and the monsters, and then you've got like bit of build-ins for the crafting side of things, and then you've got all the background theme of it being a Western sci-fi.
Yeah, I think the
Yeah.
various themes do cater to a wider audience as well, so we can bring in a lot more. We can
Yeah.
kind of blend different fans of different genres
Yeah,
together.
yeah,
into
it's
one
like
game.
an amalgamation.
So it's quite a
Genres.
unique game in the sense that you're bringing together all these different themes, and it is a challenge to blend them together. But I think if we pull it off, we could get a really good audience and
Yeah.
varied people that like different. People like sci-fi, people like westerns.
Yeah.
Some
Bring
people
them
like
together.
crafting.
Some people
and
like
stuff,
crafting,
yeah.
survival, horror games. If you could bring all them together, I think that's an interesting game. It'll be a challenge, but I think it'd be good if we could pull it off and bring all these fans together into one game.
Okay. So Luke, can you tell me how your characters are going to implement that then? Can you tell me?
The characters are going to have more of a Western style about them themselves, but of course with the native aspect we want to put more sci-fi into it, so giving them augmented armour. They'll have full masks, which you often see in many games like that today, including with this type from Destiny and other stuff like that. And as for the characters themselves, because some of them are going to be hybrids, such as the main villain, but then you've also got the creature that we defeated in the original animation. That's obviously been tampered with, so now it's a companion to the crew. And just through mixing the hybrid of all this robotics and the sci-fi around the city and incorporating that into the armour as well, and that way the whole team would look like they fit into the scene.
Okay, so spaghetti westerns have got a certain sort of like stereotype.
Yeah.
What can I get at is, how is your game sort of mimicking that in any way, shape or form?
We've got some like personality stuff that Mike is working on. So like each character's going to have different personalities and stuff like that through the dialogue system.
So are you going to have like I'm thinking good, the bad, and the ugly.
Yeah.
That's an example.
They're going to be like exaggerated gunslingers.
Okay.
Yes, I think our guns are modelled off real world. We are using real world influence from like guns of the time. So as you've seen with the sword, I've looked at parts of a revolver and what's the iconic part of that revolver I could mix into a sci-fi. So I think if we continue that theme with the characters and with the weapons, it's just about finding that blend between the two themes, and it is challenging. I found it challenging with the sword
It's a fine
because you
line
want it to
between
look
the two
modern, but then you want it to
sci-fis,
look traditional as well as cater towards that spaghetti western vibe, which is obviously an exaggerated western basically.
Yeah.
So it's about finding a good balance between having a more grounded look of a character with holsters, revolvers, clothes you have today and even back in the 1800s. But then it's also, you have to find a point where you can push it towards sci-fi as well. So that's when the
It's like some of the
cybernetics come into
materials as
it.
well, isn't it? Like, so even though it's a Western jacket, it could be made out of some futuristic material.
Yeah, so and then that's where the cybernetics come into it. So you're kind of blending a traditional style character with then adding on parts that are obviously not real world. So you have cybernetics, mutations, things like that. So yeah, it's just about finding that blend.
Okay, Liam, if the game was successful and you got a part 2 as part of a franchise, how would part 2 differ? Where would it go?
Maybe they escape the island or the planet and find out what happened to the bovine and go to the home of the bovine planets, and then you have to take out all the bovine and take over that world.
Or even cure them.
Maybe after part 2 it turns into like a movie, maybe, or like some sort of TV series.
Okay, no, that's a good answer. Good, okay. Well, I think that's it actually. That was very good. Very good, yeah, well done. Right. Okay, that was miles better. See there? Okay, that was miles better than last time. A lot better, yeah, okay.
Prepared to prepare this time.
Yeah, a lot better. Okay, so the only thing that I think let it down a little bit was the fact you left it 13 minutes before you actually told me what the game was about. Okay, alright.
You got there.
Yeah. Okay, so that's stuck out a mile for me. USP is good. I think if you're going to make it spaghetti western, you can really exaggerate that a hell of a lot more than what you've already done. I think. Okay. There's the clothing, ponchos and things like that, and bandoliers and big floppy hats or whatever. You know, you can make this look sci-fi quite easily. Things like that.
Right, okay.
Yeah, we just, although it's like a spaghetti western, we also want to try and keep the horror behind it as
Yeah,
well.
yeah.
So we
Well, you
don't
can do
want to
that
go
quite
too
easily.
elaborate,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
so
yeah.
finding that fine line.
Yeah. Make sure when you're doing the model sheets, make sure they're all like TRX poses. Whoever's doing that. Okay, all right. And the Kronk one and the Steph one are really good. So if they're all at that standard, that'd be a really good idea. I thought the Stephanie one, whoever did that was a really good one.
That was a mixture of you and whoever you, wasn't it?
Yeah, they're very good. That one was. Yeah. Okay. Well, that's one thing I forgot to ask actually. The audio stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, Luke. You say you're going to mix Western and future and sci-fi music. Is that right?
To a degree, yeah.
How are you going to do that?
It's going to be taking the undertones from Western because it's quite bubbly music normally, and you see that throughout films.
Well, what I'm trying to get at, how are you actually going to physically make that yourself, or are you going to download it and alter it? What are you going
I'll
to do?
probably be using underlying bass like chords and stuff like that, and rhythms that I actually find online, and then modifying it and putting modulators over the top of it, and then adding a few bits of elements from the futuristic into that.
Okay, good. Okay. Obviously, for presentation purposes, it was really good. The slides were a hell of a lot better than last time. Looked really professional. Okay, looked much better. The other thing I thought let it down again a little bit was if you're going to show level maps, make them readable and big. Okay, so I can actually see what's on them. Okay. Same goes for the blockouts. Really, if you're going to show any movies, if you can, make them big screen.
Okay.
But other than that, really good. That's it. Yeah, good. That's all, guys.
Sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah.